Okay, the microphone works. This is great. We are off to a good start. Thank you so much for coming to hear about failure, anxiety, and shame. I promise this won't be as depressing as it sounds. I'm Amy Newell. I am Director of Engineering at Wistia. A lot of what I do as a manager is help engineers deal with sort of emotional suffering that they experience in the workplace. I also have bipolar disorder, so I've spent basically decades of my life intensively studying the problem of emotional suffering. And I'm really excited to come here and share some of what I've learned with you. Do you recognize this movie? Raise your hand if you have seen this movie. Okay, good. There's going to be a lot of Princess Bride in this talk. But I will be giving light notes about the plot points in case you have not seen this movie. I have a little bit of problems with the traditional gender roles here, but it's still really an excellent movie. So life is pain, Highness. What are we going to cover in this talk? We want to understand the problem. Suffering at work is inevitable, but our usual approaches actually make things worse. So we create more suffering in our attempts to deal with suffering. I'm going to talk about some types of suffering we encounter at work: failure, anxiety, and shame, and sort of what lessons they may or may not have for us or how to get value from them. And then I'm going to offer some ways to navigate your suffering so that you're not producing more suffering in the world. You're actually moving through your suffering to something productive. What I am not covering: toxic situations and how to change or escape them. Poor Buttercup does not want to marry Humperdinck, but she's forced to. She can't get out of this terrible situation. She's tried and she hasn't managed. So this talk is not about toxic workplaces. It's not about psychological safety at work. It's not about how to change or escape from these places. There are questions of social justice, diversity, and inclusion, all kinds of questions that I'm not going into here. They're really important topics, but this talk is about what happens in even the best workplace possible, because you're still going to suffer. This is the pain we cannot escape. What's the problem? Work is hard. We don't know what we're doing. We're called upon to be productive, creative, and collaborative. Even in the most psychologically safe of workplaces, we'll feel pain in this process of doing work. We can't work together to do hard things without suffering. But trying to avoid pain is not the most skillful thing to do with it. It hinders our ability to learn, plan, be creative, make lives we value, and work well with others. Let's talk about our usual responses to pain. One thing we can do is blame others and lash out. It is your fault that production went down. Even if you have something like blame-free retros and you're not actually pointing fingers or yelling at other people, you can feel that anger inside, right? This is someone else's problem. And that can come out in toxic behavior even when you're trying your best not to let it. Another approach to dealing with pain is to turn it inward. We blame ourselves. I screwed up. I made this mistake. I hate myself because I did a bad job. I can't do anything right. It's very hard to move past this to actually be able to begin to fix what's wrong when you're stuck in this self-hating mode. Our third response to pain, that is not what I meant to do. Our third response to pain is to numb ourselves. We all do this. This is not like a moral, this is just what we do. Some of us use alcohol or drugs. I certainly have. We might go shopping, we might watch YouTube videos. There are a lot of ways we kind of try to take the edge off of our emotional pain. This is not bad, this is normal. It's just there's a problem with it. And the problem is that we can't selectively numb our emotions. When we numb our emotions, when we numb the bad, we're also numbing the good. This is Brené Brown. She's going to come up later in the talk around shame because all of her research is around shame. She's great. We can't selectively numb emotion. Numb the dark, and you numb the light. So if you're numbing yourself, you're going to feel less joy in addition to less pain. Worst of all, you can begin to avoid situations that cause pain, and your life actually shrinks. You might not even notice this. You might unconsciously begin to avoid things because you think they'll cause pain, but it never even rises to the level of intention that you then choose not to implement. You just don't have the thought. You have made your life smaller in an attempt to avoid pain. Here's Miracle Max. His life got smaller. He got fired by Humperdinck, and he lost his confidence that he could create miracles. So Wesley here is mostly dead. Miracle Max asks why he should be alive, why he should come back to life. Wesley says true love, and Miracle Max insists that Wesley actually said to Blave. And he says, I'm not going to make a miracle for someone who just wants to come back to bluff at cards. That's not worth my energy. His wife actually has to chase him around, yelling, Humperdinck, 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 until he's willing to take the effort and risk failing to revive Wesley. His life was smaller. This is Tara Brach. She also comes up later in the talk. She's a mindfulness teacher and a psychotherapist. The boundary to what we can accept is the boundary to our own freedom. This is the promise of accepting suffering and learning to deal with it well. Bigger lives, more freedom. The problem with dealing with our pain in all of these ways I've talked about is, again, not that they're bad, they're not immoral, we're not bad people for doing this, we're humans, we all do this. It's that they cause more pain. They don't reduce our suffering. Mindfulness teachers will say, these are not skillful approaches to suffering. We can talk about the first arrow and the second arrow. The first arrow is something in the world that causes you pain. There's an outage, you produced a bug, you got fired, a thing that causes pain. The second arrow is the suffering that you cause yourself by throwing more arrows at yourself. It's self-blame, it's throwing arrows at other people, it's numbing yourself. You're increasing the suffering in the world. You can't do anything about the first arrow. Life involves suffering, but we can do things about the second arrows. We need to become skillful at stopping second arrows. Let's think about this word skillful. Skillful means of approaching suffering help us limit the number of second arrows we're throwing at ourselves and others. And think about that word skill. This implies that this can be learned. We don't all have to be the Dalai Lama to get more skillful at dealing with suffering. We can learn those skills and start applying them today. Here's a warm-up skill, practicing gratitude. I always think this sounds a little hokey, but there's a ton of research that practicing gratitude actually works. I got some feedback when I was working on this talk that it could be kind of depressing. Maybe you're sitting in the audience thinking about ways you've failed at work or things that are making you anxious right now, and it can be a little bit of a downer. So just to lift that a little bit, I'll be taking little gratitude breaks throughout the talk to give us all a break. I would first like to be grateful for indoor plumbing. I don't have to have a chamber pot, and I don't have to go out to an outhouse, and I can just turn on the sink and get hot water whenever I want. This is really amazing, and I hardly ever take the time to be grateful for it. All right, now we're going to talk about the types of suffering that I promised that we would talk about. Failure. Something bad happened. Anxiety, something bad might happen. Shame, I am bad. Failure, something bad happened. Buttercup and Wesley have just safely emerged from the fire swamp, which is an accomplishment in itself, but they're met by Humperdinck, who captures them and separates them and murders Wesley. This is a pretty big failure. They must have been thinking, what could they have done differently? What if they had stayed and hidden in the fire swamp? Or what if they had gone a different direction through the fire swamp? Or what if they hadn't gone to the fire swamp at all, they'd done something completely different, and then they could have avoided this failure? Maybe in their heads, they're just going around and around about how they messed up, and now everything is ruined. Failure is not an option as a slogan I find really offensive. The reality is failure is inevitable. We all experience failure. We deliver a project late, we bring down production, we get fired or laid off. Both those things have happened to me. Or if we're entrepreneurs, we run out of money for our business and we have to shut it down. After I'd been a manager for a while and had done a fair amount of hiring, I had this realization that it was actually going to be impossible for me not to fail at hiring. No matter how well run my interview process is, no matter how good references I get, I will hire someone who turns out not to be right for the job. This is extremely painful. It hurts to fix this problem for lots of people. This is going to cause a lot of pain. And it also hurts to miss out on a good fit because I'm afraid of suffering the pain of making a mistake. I have to be able to take risks. It's unreasonable of me to think that if I could just crack this hiring thing, read one more article about how to do it right, that I'm going to get it down and never make a mistake. Failure is always a possibility, so I better learn to live through the pain it causes. Failure hurts, but it's also how we learn. Pain is not an unfortunate side effect of learning from failure. It's actually how we learn from failure. The pain teaches us that something went wrong. When I say, no, we are not going to have a really long-running branch for a site redesign and then release it all after many months in one big bang release, it's not because I tried that and I objectively saw that it hurt and I made notes of all the things that went wrong. Those things are useful. I don't want to do that again because it really, really hurt. It hurt a lot of people, for a long time. So I feel that pain, and that's why I don't want to do that thing again. We have a hard time learning from other people's mistakes, actually. I can tell you 10 things not to do, and you may do them all, because while I can give you lessons from my experience, it's much harder to give you the pain from my experience. If I'm a really good storyteller, I may be able to convey some of the pain to you such that you won't make those mistakes yourself, but only then. The pain is what prevents you from doing the thing again. We can actually think of experience as the record of our failures, forged through pain. There's actually some research that suggests that focusing on our emotional response to failure, like how bad it felt, is more productive than coming up with reasons that we failed so that we don't do those exact things again. The reason for that is that we really don't want to feel the failure, so we're very prone to making up sort of justifying reasons for why things went wrong. Oh, well, it was this, it was that. Those reasons are not necessarily the reasons the thing actually went wrong, but we need to be able to explain the failure. If we can sit with the pain for longer, we can actually learn more. It's also easy to learn the wrong lesson from failure. Don't try. We need to skillfully manage our failure so that we learn to do better next time, not to give up. Again, Miracle Max, his life shrank because he learned that he should just not try because he didn't want the pain. We don't want to shrink our lives. We want our lives to be as big as they can be. Here's another gratitude break. We're done talking about failure. This is my cat in a sheriff's costume. My best friend came over to my house near Halloween and brought, of course she has a kitty sheriff's costume, and put this costume on my cat, and we got a snap, and he didn't like it very much. But it makes me really happy to look at it, so. Anxiety. Something bad might happen. All right, so this is Buttercup and Wesley entering the fire swamp. There's a lot of dangers in the fire swamp. ROUSs, flame spurts, lightning sands, who knows what else. Buttercup is really anxious. How are we going to get through? There are very real risks here. In software, we also spend a lot of time dealing with uncertainty, anxiety, and risk. I'm anxious about the upcoming reorg. This is a big project I'm uncertain of being able to deliver on time. I'm worried about releasing this without testing it more. Anxiety is useful because it helps us de-risk. It means we're scanning the world for threats, and hopefully we're able to take action to reduce those threats. A lot of great software engineering processes were developed to reduce our anxiety. Continuous delivery reduces the anxiety and risk of any one release. If you have API rate limits, it increases the predictability of when your system will fail. If you write tests, you're reducing the anxiety of changing your code. These are all great things. Work environments with less psychological safety will make your anxiety much worse. Too much anxiety actually paralyzes. We stop being able to de-risk, and we just start going around and around in our heads about all of the things that can go wrong. This is a problem in the modern world because most of the time we're not just about to enter a fire swamp. Sometimes, maybe. In the modern world, we often feel like we are. We need to be skillful to keep our anxiety from overwhelming us in inappropriate situations such that we can't do anything. Not everything is a tiger. We're not always in a fire swamp. When we're anxious too much of the time, it takes a real toll on our health and on our ability to respond appropriately to true risks. Gratitude break. I really like brunch. There's like day drinking, there's eggs. It looks like there's tarragon on these eggs. I want to eat this right now. Except I did just have a great donut from the great donut place that I can't remember, but excellent. Thank you. All right, back to a challenging emotion now. Shame. Shame is, I am bad. Sorry, I keep hitting my microphone. This is a feeling of insufficiency. You don't deserve to be loved. Buttercup is in a dream here. She's just about to marry Humperdinck, and she dreams that she's being presented to the crowd, and an old woman comes up to her and yells that she is the queen of garbage. She calls her filth because she's marrying someone not out of love. Buttercup's kind of stuck, but she still feels really ashamed of her situation. She feels like garbage. Here's Brené Brown again, describing shame. The intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. We all feel this, and it feels really terrible. In software development, shame often appears as the fear that we are not smart and we don't get things done. I don't know how many of you remember this book of Joel Spolsky's about hiring engineers, but it certainly caused me a lot of imposter syndrome. Joel Spolsky would not hire me. I'm not good enough. What shame looks like. Why can't I stay focused longer? I should be learning that new framework. I'm falling behind. I should be able to fix this bug. Also, imposter syndrome. The result of this kind of suffering might be an addiction to self-improvement, productivity blogs and systems, diets, other ways to become better, and then maybe finally feel worthy. There's a nagging sense that other people out there have their act together, and I don't. That other people are smarter, more qualified, better at their jobs. They also have their finances in order and enough toilet paper in their bathrooms. So, shame. I'm unworthy and bad, and I can't get better. This is demoralizing. It prevents us from making changes because it tells us we are unworthy and can't be better. But when we manage shame skillfully, we can separate our behaviors that we might want to change from who we are as a person. Buttercup woke up from that dream, decided that she wanted to change the behavior of quietly acquiescing to marriage with Humperdinck, and she went to Humperdinck and told him that she wasn't going to marry him. In the end, that didn't work out for her, but she did take action. So she took action to change her circumstances, even in the face of feeling helpless to do so, because she didn't feel good about quietly accepting her fate. In our lives, for example, maybe I set up a subscription for toilet paper, and then it just arrives on a regular basis, and I never run out of toilet paper again. One more gratitude break. Do you guys recognize this vegetable? You can just go to the grocery store and buy this crazy fractal thing and then spend all Saturday morning staring at it, being like, this is a crazy fractal thing, how does this exist? And then you can cut it up and like saute it with some garlic and oil and eat it. This is just amazing to me, and it makes me feel really good to look at it. So, failure helps us learn. Anxiety helps us deal with risk. Shame might mask guilt, which might help us change our behavior. But here's the big question. How do we navigate these painful emotions skillfully so we can get the benefit they bring while creating as little additional pain as possible? How do we accept the fact that we will have first arrows in our lives and limit the number of second arrows? Let's talk about some skills for suffering. We've already met practicing gratitude. Here's a new one. Pain is temporary. If you don't like the weather, wait a minute. Emotions don't last very long unless we keep feeding them, and we can learn to break that cycle and stop feeding our emotions. Think about a time that you were in pain like this and that it ended. Remember that pain ends. Pay attention to when your pain lessens or ends and appreciate that moment. As we become more skillful with our pain, it won't last as long. We'll throw fewer second arrows. Also remember that you're not alone. This is Pema Chodron. She's also a meditation teacher. Suffering is part of life, and we don't have to feel it's happening because we personally made the wrong move. Other people also experience suffering. It's completely normal. We're not alone in this. One way to remember that you're not alone is to share your pain. I feel really anxious about this release. I feel ashamed that I don't understand Elasticsearch better by now, and it's made it really hard for me to ask for help on this bug. I feel like I'm doing a lousy job. I can't stop thinking about how I screwed up that query, and it caused the users table to lock up in production. Sharing your pain is shown to reduce its intensity and duration. Research backs this up. While you're sharing, it can also be a good time to reality check. Am I perceiving the situation accurately? What do others see? Is the thing that's causing me pain as bad as it seems to me? Other people might say, yeah, that's risky, but we're doing X, Y, and Z to mitigate this risk, and I feel pretty confident about it. They might say, what I see is that you're actually doing a great job in these 5 ways. Let me tell you. They might say, it could have been much worse. I did a similar thing a few weeks ago, and nothing really bad happened as a result. Reality checking can really help you with keeping your pain under control. Suffering can fuel empathy or bitterness. You get to choose. A friend told me about his experience hearing others say bad things about a code base he'd worked on a lot. He felt ashamed of his old code. It helped him to remember the schedule and business constraints he'd been operating under, and to remember that he'd improved as a developer since that time. It also resulted in his feeling greater empathy for the authors of other ugly code, and remembering not to badmouth other people's old code. He let his suffering lead to empathy, not bitterness. Next, you can orient toward your values. Remember where you're going and why it matters to you. What is this suffering enabling? It's really hard for me to stand up here and talk to you guys about these topics. It was really hard for me to write this talk. It's really hard for me to get on airplanes. I go through that suffering because I feel that I have something I want to share and that I can add value to the world by doing so. I use the knowledge of what I care about to move through my pain rather than running from it. And you can too. Remember what you care about and why it's important to move through the pain. You can take the next step forward. If you're feeling paralyzed by pain, just do the next smallest thing. When I was feeling stuck and scared about this talk, I took the next smallest step forward. I opened Keynote and I put my title on a slide, and then I immediately changed my title. Sometimes the next smallest step forward might be open the file or read the email. We can get stuck on the tiniest things, but if we take the next step forward, we will feel an immediate reduction in pain almost every time. I'm going to talk about some mindfulness. Rufo Sanchez is giving a talk entirely about mindfulness, which I encourage you all also to see. I'm going to explain one approach to mindfulness that's particularly helpful for suffering. It's called RAIN. It was developed by Tara Brach. Recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. First, identify when you're feeling pain. This is harder than it sounds. It means you have to pay attention to how you're feeling. And we're not always good at doing that. Try to notice the moment you reach for someone else to blame or something to take the edge off, or you fall into self-hatred. And notice, I must be suffering. You might not notice till you wake up with a hangover. You might not notice till you've bought 3 pairs of shoes you didn't need. You might not notice until you've already snapped at someone else. That's okay. The moment you notice is the moment that's right to stop and pay attention. The other thing to know is that we feel emotional suffering in our bodies. As developers, we spend so much time up in our heads. But if you stop and pay attention to your pain, you're going to feel it through your whole body. Recognizing your pain means paying attention to your body and feeling how your pain feels in it. Next, allow your pain. Drop your stories about how you should feel. Don't try to change what you're feeling. Research shows that that doesn't work. It just makes it worse. What you should feel is a second arrow. Don't blame yourself for how you feel. Just let it be. At any level of recursion with this should, I wish I didn't feel this way, oh no, I wish I didn't feel that I wish I didn't feel this way, you can throw in a break statement and begin to unwind that stack. At any point, you can stop. This is okay, this is how I'm feeling now. Next, investigate. Be curious about your pain. It's not all one thing. It might feel like one big thing until you start paying attention to it, and it might feel like it will never move or change or go away. But when you pay attention to it, you see it's not like that at all. It's moving and changing and waxing and waning, and it will go away someday like everything else does. This is the experiential evidence of the thing I said earlier, that pain is temporary. Watch your thoughts and the stories that go along with it. That's part of investigating your pain. But try not to get caught up in them. Two metaphors that people often talk about for watching your thoughts is think of each thought as a train car going past on a track. You don't have to attach to it, you can just notice it. Also, think of them as clouds passing in the sky. Again, you don't have to attach, just watch it go past. The next step is nurture. This is mindful self-compassion. Again, this sounds pretty hokey. There is a ton of research backing this up that this is helpful. Treat yourself as you would treat a friend who was in pain. Would you say to that friend, if they came to you with what you're suffering, you wouldn't berate them, you wouldn't point out all the mistakes they had made, you wouldn't tell them all the things that might go wrong in the future. You would wish them well, you would want them to be happy, you would try to remind them of the good things in their lives, and you would sit lovingly with them as they suffered. You can do this for yourself. I put my hand on my heart, and I say, may I be happy, may I be safe, may I be free from pain. You can use whatever phrase resonates with you. I really recommend you try this, though. It's really helpful. Show yourself compassion for the pain that you're suffering. The last step, after you've done those, is to rest in awareness that you're the sky. You are not the clouds. You're not your thoughts. You're not your feelings. You're not your clenched stomach. You're not your heart that's hurting. You're something bigger. You're the sky. When we become confident that we can navigate our suffering, our possibilities expand. We stop running from the pain, and we actually suffer less, and we have more room for living. The better we are able to tolerate feeling bad, the more successful we can be. Here's Wesley. He's still pretty much mostly dead. He's trying to get into the castle to save Buttercup. There are 50 guards outside the castle, and they've got 3 people and not much else. If we only had a Holocaust cloak and a wheelbarrow, he says. In fact, they do have both those things. But Wesley is navigating his suffering really confidently, and I can guarantee you that if they didn't have a Holocaust cloak or a wheelbarrow, he would just look around for something else. That's skillfully managing his pain. Skillfully moving through your suffering will make you happier, healthier, and a better developer. That's what I promised. So I'm going to talk about ways that this is going to make you a better developer. I hope the ways that it'll make you feel happier and healthier are already kind of obvious at this point. So you'll be a better team member because you're going to have more empathy for the other people on your team. You'll also take your pain out on your coworkers less because you'll learn to recognize pain more quickly in the process before you've yelled at someone. You'll be free to take more risks. You won't be so scared of the consequences. You'll learn more from your failures because you'll tolerate the pain of the failure better, and you won't immediately rush to possibly incorrect conclusions about what you should or shouldn't do next time. You'll be more productive because your pain will lose its grip on you. You'll spend less time having to numb yourself, less time saying, all right, I'm just going to look at Facebook again because I can't figure out this bug and I feel crappy about that. You'll be more productive. Life hurts. We are all in this together. Let's try to stop running from the pain, pay attention, and be compassionate, not just to other people, but to ourselves. This is a practice. There's no moment you will have mastered it. Good luck. Here's some resources. If you haven't seen The Princess Bride, I do recommend it. You can go check out the mindfulness talk next. Jennifer, too, is giving a talk on burnout, where she talks about some of the stuff I didn't talk about, toxic situations, and kind of how to deal with those. I hope you'll try out some of the things I talked about, some of the skills for dealing with suffering. Check out the resources. Catch me around the conference or on Twitter if you want to talk more. And have fun storming the castle. Thank you. I guess I have, is this correct, that I have like 4 minutes for questions if people want to ask questions? That's a great question. So the question was, if you're a manager and you're having one-on-ones with other people on your team, how do you begin to be able to talk to them about their pain? Did I repeat that correctly? Okay. So I think the first thing is that you really need to, have been establishing a good and trusting relationship with those people to begin with. The second thing, honestly, that really can help is just to, in a situation where you think they might be feeling pain, say, you might be feeling pain. I try to check in with people if there's been a bug that they were involved with or something went wrong, and I suspect that they might be feeling bad about it. I check in. How are you feeling? This is going to be okay. How can I help? Do you need a break? Sometimes the best thing to do if someone's in a lot of pain is say, hey, do you just want to go home and, go for a walk? I think those are some of the sort of techniques you can use for that. But really, the first thing is to just ask, hey, are you feeling bad, and can I help with that? Okay, so the question is, what is my opinion about 5 whys? I think like any process, it can sometimes be useful in some circumstances and sometimes can go subtly wrong in other ways. And so I think if you're feeling in an environment that the 5 whys are not being helpful, then that would be kind of a pain point to talk about with whoever's running the 5 whys. There might be like sort of little interventions that can be done to make that better. But I also think that one thing can help whenever you're doing any kind of retro is to acknowledge the pain that might be in the room, that might be subtly affecting how people are behaving, but that they're not talking about it because there's this notion that we're not supposed to bring those feelings to this kind of meeting. Whether we're supposed to or not, we bring our feelings to those meetings. So I think talking about them and openly acknowledging them can sometimes help move this in a better direction. Okay, so the question is, what if people don't think emotions are appropriate in particular kinds of meetings, or possibly at work generally? I would consider that to be a kind of toxic situation that you can try to move the culture by talking about, if you go on like Harvard Business Review, right? There's like plenty of articles about how dealing with emotion in a workplace actually makes that workplace more productive. I manage thinking about emotion a lot, not just because I think it's important to treat people like humans, but also because it's more productive for businesses. Pretending emotion is not there is not productive. So the question is, how can I help people work through sort of additional pain that they may be putting on themselves without discounting the original pain? Can you give an example of how you worry that you might be discounting that original pain? Right, okay, so I think the thing to do in a situation like that, to repeat the question, there's a concern that's saying if someone broke production that saying, oh no, we've done it don't worry about it, is discounting their pain. So the approach that I would use instead is to say, hey, I know you're feeling awful. We all feel awful when we break production. That's okay. It's also important for you to know that it's okay that production was broken. Both those things are okay. And just maybe listen to how they're feeling for a little while, and not expect that pain to go away immediately, just to let it be. I think I'm out of time now, so thank you so much, everyone.